time is 7 o'clock, and we'll call to order the City Council meeting for October 14th, 2019. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Browning?
Here.
Mr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here. Tonight's invocation will be led by Pastor Beth Gierdick of Zion United Church of Christ, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance Boy Scouts Troops 488 and Cub Scout Pack 490. So Beth, if you'll please come forward and all please stand.
Holy God, we thank you for the leaders that you have raised up among us. We pray for your spirit to be here tonight. We pray for your spirit of wisdom. We pray for your spirit of unity. We thank you for the work that's being done in our city and in our county. And we ask that you would continue to guide us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Boys, if you'll come forward and lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Beth and gentlemen. These boys had a meeting with me earlier and had some great questions, so thank you for being here tonight. Y'all are going to skedaddle now. I don't blame them. Item 4 on the agenda is the approval of the motion summary of the regular meeting of council held September 23rd, 2019, as recorded and transcribed. What is the wish of council?
Move for approval. Second.
I got echoes here in my ear.
I did first.
You did first, so did he. Okay. Motion by Mr. Browning, second by Mr. Rohr. Since they only have 2 meetings to go, let's give it to them tonight. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. And then the approval of the motion summary of the work session meeting of council held September 30th, 2019, as recorded and transcribed.
Move for approval. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Browning, a second by Mr. Rohr. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 5 is the consent agenda. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Item A, acceptance of the motion summary of the Sister City Advisory Board meeting held on April 9, 2019, as recorded and transcribed. Item B, acceptance of the motion summary of the Civil Service Commission meeting held on August 14, 2019, as recorded and transcribed. Item C, acceptance of the motion summary of the Historic Preservation Commission meetings held on July 24, 2019, and August 28, 2019, as recorded and transcribed. And item D, acceptance of the motion summary of the Planning Commission meeting held on September 4th, 2019, as recorded and transcribed.
What is the wish of council on the consent agenda?
Move for approval on the consent agenda. Second.
Motion by Mr. Browning, second by Mr. Rohr. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 6 is time set aside for letters, petitions, or public comments for anything that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward at this time? Jess, if you'll come to the table here, and as you sit down at the microphone, I'll need your name and address.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Manager. My name is Brandy Braun. I am here on behalf of the YMCA of Central Ohio. My work address is 1907 East Leonard Avenue. Or do you need my home address?
Oh, that's
No?
fine.
Great, okay. Go ahead and dive in.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks for having me here tonight. So it is my second week with the YMCA of Central Ohio. I joined as the Chief Strategy Officer, where I will be leading our approach to strategy, innovation, data, and community engagement, specifically local government engagements. Before joining the Y, I spent 16 years in state and local government. About 12 of those were working with our President and CEO, Tony Collins, at both the City of Gahanna and the City of of Columbus. So while I just officially started last week, prior to joining, I did get up to speed as much as possible on the relationship and partnership between the Y and the City of Delaware. I watched council meeting videos, read some minutes, newspaper articles, and have met with some individuals to learn about where we've been, where we are, and most importantly, where we need to be going in the future. We had a good meeting today. Myself, Lolita, who I know you're all familiar with, Tom, Ted, Kyle, to report on our current draft of the annual program report, where we share the data, numbers, and financials behind the recreation services that the Y is providing on behalf of the City of Delaware. We got some great feedback on that report, and we'll be resubmitting it with some additional information by the end of this week. Also want to give an update on the executive director search. We're doing phone screenings with the tentative date of in-person interviews with the panel that's comprised of members from the Y, the City of Delaware, and the Delaware Y Advisory Board. The date we have tentatively scheduled for that is October 28th. So I just wanted to come tonight, introduce myself, share what I'm going to be doing. I'll be working closely with Lolita on our approach to local government engagement and how we continue our communication and collaboration around this partnership. And you will probably see much more of me here to talk about what we're doing.
We should also say that Councilwoman
I was just gonna
Keller
ask.
and
Oh, yes,
Councilman
I'm sorry.
Hellinger were at the meeting as
Sorry,
well, and as
council
part of, in
members,
their
yes.
capacity on the Y
I was
advisory.
just going to
Yes.
ask that question, so
Yep,
thanks,
yes,
Tom.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Yes, they were.
Okay, well, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
you're
Yeah,
welcome, thank you,
thanks.
thank you.
Anyone else in the audience that'd like to come forward? Okay, seeing none, I'll close this section of it. I'll go on to the committee reports. Mr. Jones?
I have none at this time.
Mrs. Keller?
Well, the YMCA committee met today.
Mhm.
Some progress on some things, perhaps backwards on another few things. One of the things that we discussed was the rates that were at our last meeting. New rates were proposed. The Y is now still working on those rates. So the information that we communicated at our last meeting may change regarding rate drops that we can be expecting. So that situation is fluid at this point. So kind of scratch what we said last update, and moving forward, we're just waiting to find out what those rates will be from the Y. At the end of November, we're working on adjusting some of the recreation totals. There is a $3 fee that's being charged by the YMCA for memberships that is supposed to be going to Mingo Pool, but that revenue is not being shown in the Mingo Pool revenue. So the current numbers look like there was a loss, but I think with those adjusted numbers, there will certainly not be a loss anymore. So that's part of what the adjustments that we're waiting for, and we'll continue to make progress.
Have the rebates gone out to those that paid too much? last
So
year?
the Y gave us a list of the rebate amounts. We still have some questions regarding some of the people who aren't finding those, but we can handle that
Okay,
at a different time.
all right, thank
Thank
you. Mr. Browning?
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Rohr?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Hellinger?
I have nothing.
Nothing to add to that?
No,
That you
no,
read
she
today?
summed it up well.
Okay. Mr. Shaker?
Parking safety will meet next Monday, the 21st at 6 o'clock.
Okay. We did have a good Sister City meeting the other night, so moving along. Okay, item 8 is the fourth reading and adoption of the resolution 1940, a resolution adopting the 2020 through 2024 5-year capital improvement plan. Anything to add? I'm sure you do.
No, just real quickly, I appreciate council's spending the time on the CIP. As reflected in the document you have in front of you, this reflects the changes that council discussed and voted on at the last meeting. One is to undertake an evaluation for a traffic signal at Carson Farms Boulevard and 36. And that is scheduled for evaluation in 2020. And then we've budgeted $250,000 estimate for the project in 2021 in terms of actually construction of that project. And I know there was some concern about trying to get that done next year, but I think our recommendation would be, let's evaluate it, get the information back. It is a big number in terms of that cost. So that's the one area that we've changed. The other one
Can I
was,
ask you a question on that? Is that road gonna go right through their park, or is that our park? If you look by the school there, when I look at it over the map.
Wrong place.
this is for the
Oh, wrong.
Signal Carson.
Oh,
Yeah,
never
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
I'm thinking the
You're
other
thinking
one.
Pennock, yeah.
Pennock, sorry.
I have that down here
Okay.
as well.
I'm getting ahead of you, sorry.
Right. So this would be for that signal. Councilwoman Keller had requested that this be considered at the last meeting, and that's what's reflected. The second item is a smaller expenditure, but it's still an expenditure of city dollars to assist in the placement of a second arch on Winter Street. This was always contemplated as part of the streetscape project. We have the one arch, the Buns Arch as it's referred to. This would be an arch that would celebrate the Strand and that arts district area. And the Strand Board is going to do a fundraising campaign for the actual arch itself and for the sign. This money reflects doing the foundation work necessary to make that possible. So it's another example of a collaborative project that will promote the downtown. So those are the two items that are reflected in what you have in front of you. What's not reflected, but I had indicated in a note a couple of weeks ago, was we are still in conversations with the school board, with the school superintendent and her staff regarding the extension of Pennock Avenue, not Pennock, Cobblestone from Pennock to Cobblestone. And Bill's here this evening, he can speak on that. We're still discussing the scope of that project. We're probably going to design it in-house. I have a meeting with the school superintendent at the end of this week. One of the questions is, when would that be constructed? And we'll know more about that in the next few weeks. So there will probably be an impact to the budget. I just don't know if it'll be in 20 or 21. My preference would be to construct this in 21 if possible. Bill, you can elaborate.
Right, so our team is working with the school team. I think everyone's in agreement what the road could look like, access points, the alignment for it, and the need for it. So that part's pretty well settled. We're working some of the details out about, the design, like Tom said, we'll do it in-house, and the timing of how that meshes up with opening of the new wing at the Schultz School and what the preferences of the school are gonna be. Ours are not to rush the project, make sure we get it right. But we want to make sure that it serves the school's purposes too, because it will serve as the new main bus drop-off area on the backside of the school when the project's complete. And then the front of the school will be parent drop-off. It will actually double the capacity of parent drop-off when this project is done also. It's really looked at as trying to reduce some of the congestion around that school with this project. So it's a good project. Regarding your question, Mayor, about the park, that land is all owned by the schools. All the way back, even into the wooded section, that's way back there. And this particular project was discussed as far back as '94 when the schools were first contemplating purchase that property and understanding that someday this connection would likely occur. And I think now with the issues we have with congestion around the schools and traffic, now is the appropriate time to finish that up and get that project done.
How much of that park do they use as ball fields right now? Any of it?
From our discussions, closest to the school is where they have some play area, but not, it's really just open field at this point. And we are discussing too, their plans in the future, if they do want to have any type of access south of the road, that we can accommodate that with the appropriate traffic calming and crossings, build it into the project now to make sure we're thinking forward in that regard. Those discussions have been occurring with the schools as well.
Okay. And is the school supposed to open in 2021?
We know they want to start construction in 20, so I don't have the specific
Fall of
schedule.
21.
Yeah.
Fall of 21. So ideally, the road is open when the school opens. So the question is,
Getting that light up there before school starts so everybody's on the same page. So I don't know whether it needs to get done in 20 or 21, but we don't want to just put it up and school start the next day. We want people to have a chance to.
The light is at Carson Farms Boulevard.
But this road going through there too, I just think it needs to be done prior to then. You know,
The
people,
road, I think, definitely needs.
well, he's saying 21, and the schools are gonna open in 21.
Well, the scheduled project, the signal project we just talked about
Yeah.
is for design in 20, construction in 21 as part of the capital budget. We don't have this project programmed in the capital budget that we're approving tonight, or the capital plan. We're still trying to figure the details out with the school,
Right.
when they need that road constructed. It cannot be 20 or cannot be 21. And then I think city
Right,
manager
then
will
we would
bring
come
back
back as part of
schedule.
the budget process and decide if to possibly do an amendment or just include it in the, depending on when it's constructed. So
There's some
we will be
different
making a
mechanisms
change.
to bring the project to construction, and those are the details we're still working out with the school.
Yeah.
How to actually get the constructed going, and who's gonna be responsible.
Looking at trying to partner with the schools on it,
I know,
No, I agree, it needs to happen at the same time.
it needs to happen together, yeah.
Yeah,
so that the school opens at the same time the road
The
is.
road.
Right, yes.
yeah, you can't have the school open with all those extra
No.
kids
No,
and then not
that's-
have that extra
Right,
connection.
Mhm.
and that's possible to do in 21, it just has to start early, that's all. But we'll recognize that. So that's what's reflected in the write-up for the CIP, not the Penick or the Cobblestone connector, but these other two projects that we had discussed earlier. So it's, again, you're adopting the plan tonight. The appropriation for 2020 would be part of the 2020 budget that you will be adopting in December. So all you're adopting tonight is the plan, which is really a blueprint for the next 5 years of various projects the city has on its plate.
Pretty presumptuous that he thinks it's gonna get adopted tonight. Did you hear that, guys? What is the wish of council?
I move for approval.
Well, I'm sorry.
Just saying.
It's,
Move for approval of
Just give me
19,
one time.
resolution 1940.
Second,
I have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Ms. Keller. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
thank you.
Item 9, consideration of resolution 19-47. Elaine, would you read this into the record?
Resolution number 19-47, a resolution establishing guidelines for proposed developer-initiated new community authorities.
Got a lot of presenters on here. This resolution follows discussion city council had when we were considering the new community authority for the Terra Alta project. At the time, council was indicating it would be helpful to perhaps put some guidelines in place for future new community authorities, should they be initiated either by the city or by the private sector. What you have before you is the work over the last several months of Councilman Jones, Vice Mayor Schaefer, myself, Mr. Shulman, and Mr. Eflin. This does not have to be adopted tonight, but it's really just gives you an opportunity to take a look and decide if you think it's appropriate that we provide some guidelines to at least let the development community know and the staff know under what conditions, what circumstances would we consider these. And I know that came up a lot during the Terra Alta discussion.
But the approval for this is just the outline of the form, right?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
You're just
I
providing
thought it was
guide-
right on point when I looked at it. That being said, I'll move for approval of resolution 1947.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? George is giving me that look.
Yeah, Mr. Jones has kind of jumped the gun on that. As I read through that, and again, it comes back to, we say, part of that says, new community authorities should have a limited duration, and they should be of the shortest time possible. And then about 2 points after that, it says, oh, but we want to convert HOAs to NCAs for tax purposes. And so HOAs tend to be of long duration, of undeterminate duration. I think those are very conflicted. And I still hold my position that HOAs have their place and NCAs are, and HOAs should not commingle myself. That's all I got.
Good.
Just to answer what I think we were trying to get at that issue, The idea would be we want we would approve an NCA to end, but if they said, rather than pay the homeowner association, we would like to take that, get rid of that and pay it instead as an NCA because it has a tax benefit to us, the residents, not us, the city. We would consider allowing that to happen because to tell them, you can't convert your NCA, your homeowner association to the NTA and NCA, and therefore you have to lose the tax benefits, might be punitive to the people who live there. So the idea is not to allow both or automatically allow the NCA. It's to basically say if homeowners come to us and say, we don't want to pay the homeowner association charge, we'd rather continue to pay the same amount as an NCA, that's something we would consider. That's not required to put in there, but it was one of the issues that was brought up in some prior ones that it might be something we might not want to allow for.
It does, when you read it, it is a little confusing. I think the spirit of this was that you weren't gonna have two charges
Right.
remaining in place. And so maybe that needs to be worked on in some ways. I know that was the question that came up with Terra Alta, was that I think what they were proposing to the city was that the HOA would benefit if the land that they was held by the new community authority and thus not subject to taxation.
Right.
And so that was, I think that was the spirit of that, but.
And
it
in
doesn't
addition,
read-
it might also have the same benefit. Let's pretend there's no charge, but the NCA is allowed to survive and just as Tom mentioned, put the property in the NCAs and, they can still pay with the HOA, but the NCA would exist for that purpose of avoiding taxation. So there's other ways to skin that cat, even if you want the charge to roll off. But that was, again, all part of discussion. It doesn't have to be in the guidelines. It was just something that came up earlier.
Do you want to chew on that some more?
I would like to myself.
Okay.
Please.
Withdraw the motion then.
Okay. All right. We will move on to item 10, consideration of ordinance number 1958. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 19-58, an ordinance approving a combined preliminary and final development plan for Sawmill Delaware Investments to construct a new building, Innovation Center, at 109 Innovation Court on approximately 6 acres zoned M1 PMU, Light Manufacturing District with a planned mixed-use overlay district.
Mr. Eflin?
Madam Mayor, members of council, this proposal is to build another building out on Innovation Court, Symmetry 3, if you will. We're calling it Innovation Center. At this point in time, it'll be basically a sister building to the Innovation 2 building that's already out there at the end of Sawmill Parkway. So here's the proposed site just north of the existing Innovation building on Innovation Court. The site is zoned M1 with a planned mixed-use overlay and a specific text that goes with that. Site is farm field. The proposed site plan here shown in blue is obviously the retention basin, which would be on the west side of the property. In yellow, the parking lot and the truck docks and truck maneuvering areas. And the salmon color is the building with some of the truck dock demarcation shown as well. You could also see the landscaping in terms of street trees and front yard trees that are proposed for this approximate 6-acre site and 60,000 square foot building. Has potential for up to 10 units, although that can be demised in any number of ways as the building may get constructed. The proposed elevations, I know it's hard to see here, easier to see in your packet, but a large building that is a metal building similar to Innovation or Symmetry 2 in all respects, and a rendering of the building itself. So your Planning Commission does recommend approval, as do we, and it will provide some additional space in our industrial area on Innovation Court. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
I would just add that John Lewis and his team have a proven track record going back decades in terms of the work they've done in the community, and the opportunities they provided for jobs and employment. And this is Sean's been working on this project. This is a good project for our community, and I think it will be, it's gonna be well received, I think, because Symmetry 2 is full.
One is full, yeah.
One is full, I'm sorry.
2 is full.
Two is full.
Two, so,
Thank you for choosing Delaware. Do you have anything to add to his report? If you do, you have to come to the microphone now.
come on.
Come on. Thanks for putting my yellow Jeep in that rendering too. Just kidding.
Thank you for having us here. I'm John Lewis. I live at 1036 Hills Miller Road in Delaware. This is Amy Huffman.
I'm Amy Biondi Huffman. My business address is 8400 Industrial Parkway, Plain City, Ohio 43064, and I'm the contractor for the project.
And one of the partners.
And one of the partners in the project.
I don't know for sure how much we can add that you don't already know. I mean, this is sort of the third in a series of spec buildings that we're doing. I mean, obviously Fed One and Amy have done many more buildings in Delaware, but not quite like this with it being a spec thing. The first two took a little while, and were a little bit of struggle for a while, but we have high hopes that the demand that we've seen over the past couple years is going to continue, and that we can fill this up. We had a meeting today with one potential tenant that could take 2/3 of it. It's all pie in the sky right now, and I'm a little bit superstitious, so I don't want to tell exactly who it is just yet.
But we are working closely with Sean Hughes to identify potential tenants and work on different incentives that could be offered to these tenants to attract them.
Okay. They bring eventually maybe as many as 50 jobs or something in there in 2/3 of the building. So we're pretty excited about them. I don't know if they'll show up for sure yet, but we should know in a month or two. Other than that, thank you all for your interest in it and
And our intention would be to start the project yet this fall so that we can have something up and running and operational to move tenants in sometime in April.
Anything we can answer?
Any questions for the applicant or Dave? I think you have a proven track record here, so.
Would
Thank you.
move to
Thank you.
suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 19-58.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Keller, second by Mr. Browning. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of ordinance 19-58.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Keller, second by Mr. Browning. Any additional questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much.
Item 11 is consideration of ordinance number 19-59. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 19-59, an ordinance approving a preliminary subdivision plat request by Gordon LLC for Winterbrook Place containing 263 single-family lots on approximately 100.6 acres zoned R3 PMU, one family residential district with a planned mixed-use overlay district, and located on the north side of Peach Blow Road just east of the Belmont Place subdivision.
Mr. Eflin?
Madam Mayor, members of council, this is the follow-up companion piece of legislation to the zone change and preliminary plan that you've already passed. This is the preliminary plat for the entire subdivision for Winterbrook Place. Recall, it's about 100 acres off of Peach Blow Road. We did zone it R3 with a planned mixed-use overlay zoning, which includes the text and the plan. Our comprehensive plan does call for low density single family in this area, which obviously that fits. It is primarily tabletop farmland at this time. There is one existing old farmhouse here in this corner. Just to refresh your memory, this was the plan that came in preliminarily, but also serves really as the color illustration of the preliminary subdivision plat. I think at Planning Commission, there was a lot of discussion about the plat from the engineer that had been submitted as opposed to this picture that you see on the screen, which is approved by the City of Delaware with respect to some of the amounts of water, particularly up here in this park, Linda area. Obviously also at this stage, in a preliminary stage, we don't have all of the parkland detailed out yet. That's usually the subject of final plans and plats as they might come in, and we do have a condition of that zoning approval in the zoning text, which requires good planning and good amenity package for all of these park areas. This being one, this being another. There's one under the power lines here with a walkway, but we think there's some opportunities for some field space and certainly some programming in this area. And then there's some programming near the entrance of the subdivision as well. There was some conversation at Planning Commission about the closeness of this park to the roadways. That's completely in keeping. I went back and I checked, it's completely in keeping with what was approved with the preliminary plan. And the shelter house that's preliminarily proposed is about 120 feet from any roadway. So it's significantly back from the roadway. It's easy to lose a sense of scale on these things. What else did I want to remark on? There were also some discussions at Planning Commission with respect to the extent that you might have active play area next to a pond. Could happen in this area as well if field space is included, that there would be some sort of fencing divider between that pond and the active play space. And you may have a different fence in this location than you might have in this location, to be determined with the final plans and final plats. There is a lot of active linear open space along Winterbourne, which is not inconsistent with the communities of Glen Ross Peace to the north as well. So I want to show you just the active park plan again. I confirmed with the engineer today that the engineering plans that were submitted hadn't accounted for this open space, and so to the extent they showed a pond pretty much occupying this entire reserve, that was incorrect. It's preliminary, it's really showing lots, lot layouts, and street layouts. So it will be in accordance with the plans that have been approved by this council as they come in. Here's a subdivision plat, which is pretty unintelligible at this scale, even on the size of these screens, but they were included in your packet, so we could go over that in more detail if you like. But your Planning Commission did recommend approval of this case as submitted, as do we as staff. We consider this fairly perfunctory, and I can assure you that before we sign off, this is going to sound a little funny, on the final preliminary plat, from a staff perspective, we'll make sure that it reflects everything that I've said here tonight. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Just for clarification, at the planning meeting, and we talked about these parklands, so much of your water is encompassed in the park areas, but yet the water cannot be used for recreational. So, and there's 4, as you can see, there's 4 lots. So that was a big concern of ours. 260, 250, whatever it is, there's a lot of houses there. And we didn't think that there was enough park area and where they were placed. 2 near water, 1 near a roundabout. That was a big concern of ours. So we had great discussion about that. And I know that they had to put the power lines that go through there, so the water had to be there. There had to be the land left in the middle because that's what was required. But now you can't build there, you can't have water under, but now you want kids to play there. So just, I don't know, there was just a lot of discussion about that.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. And I think this plan is in keeping with, this is the preliminary plan with what you've approved. What I would say is that unlike Glen Ross North, which is a Central Park type plan, this is a more dispersed plan in terms of active parkland, but you do have it in every quadrant of this development, and I think really activating some of this space. You know, every Olentangy school that I'm familiar with has their active, is typically located either under or close to a power line, but their active open space is located in that space as well. Of course, you have bike paths coming through here, but I think this space could be, this is a lot bigger than it appears on this diagram. could accommodate some large field spaces as well. You do, of course, have to account for stormwater management, and that's why I wanted to confirm with the engineer today that, you know, certainly this active park space is very, very important to this quadrant of the plan. And so when I see a whole pond there, obviously get nervous for the same reasons you just remarked on. What they confirmed today, and they can, you know, have them come up tonight and reaffirm it, is that this active park area, which would include a tot lot, bike paths, and then some field space and other amenities that we might determine through the final development plan and plat, gets programmed well. That'd be my comment to that. But I think it's a good discussion, but this is, at the end of the day, fairly perfunctory from a preliminary subdivision plat, with more work to do as the finals come in.
Well, I just think that maybe we need to redefine what the park area is, because when you read it, it says it's 25%. If you take out all the water now, it's not 25%.
Well, what this shows actually, and I think there was some miscommunication on that as well, but as we were going through the zoning, is there's about 25 to 27% open space. That includes open space and parkland. That's the way we've always defined it.
With the water or without?
That's the way, with it, that includes everything. But there's over 10% active parkland, again, assuming that that reserve isn't all water. There's over 10% active parkland contained within here, so that's not including the water, which would meet our minimums and meet their zoning text as well. Again, I think the design here matters the most, and how we design the active parkland as we go into final plans and plats will be of paramount importance, and the developer's well aware of that. We had another conversation today with them about that. So Bob's nodding his head out there.
Okay, and then there was one lot, lot number 84.
Yeah, oh, yes.
That they had a lot of questions about whether a house should be built there, because it does take up quite a bit of that lot.
Thank you.
Power lines.
This lot right here, you can just make out, this is about 150-foot easement for the overhead electric lines. The electric lines actually are right in here between the two sets of dash lines, and then there's easement outside of those as well. So the easement outside, the electric lines themselves are not over this lot, but the easement is over a chunk of this lot. And again, Bob and I discussed today the need as we go into final plan and plat that the developer may be restricted on the house depth they can build there, so we can get a house in, but we can also account for what almost all of our citizens end up doing, building a deck or a patio or something behind their home, such that it would be outside of the easement. They're well aware of that, and it wouldn't be the first time we've restricted a lot or several lots to particular house depths for various reasons.
I understand that. I'm just sharing with the rest of the council.
No, that's a good point. I forgot that one, so I appreciate you bringing it up.
Questions, comments?
I would agree with the concerns. I mean, it seems like with all the space there to work with, the place to put the tot lots or places for kids to play next to water seems ill-advised.
Well, that's why we asked for fences. But
Would that be fully enclosed fence, or would that just be kind of one of those fences?
I bet it's a split rail.
I think we're gonna have to look at each one of these, Councilwoman Keller. For instance, the electric overhead easement area with two large ponds on either side probably lends itself to a little different application in terms of fencing, and also where active may be, as opposed to in the northwest corner. There's actually quite a lot of room there. It's almost an acre and a half of active space in there. So simply separating the pond from that active space. Yet I would remark to you that in Mingo Park and in Blue Limestone and throughout several subdivisions, we have water next to active play spaces, and it's okay. I mean, it's not as small, I think, as you think just looking at this diagram. And that can be okay. The water can be an amenity as well. But I think just if you're kicking a ball or something on a field, you don't want some kids just go running after it into the pond. So I think that's the point of the separation with a fence.
Any other comments or questions for either Dave or the applicant? Would the applicant like to come add anything to this?
Sure.
Good evening.
Bob Gurdon, 10590 Wellington Boulevard, Palo, Ohio, 43065. I had a lot of discussions with Dave regarding some of the issues that he brought up, and we're willing to, you know, program some areas to, as we go through the final engineering process, to, you know, make them better or more presentable. I know it's difficult to see this, but there's kind of a small little loop that's right on that path. And there is one to the east as well. And that's where the tot lot is. So it's a considerable distance away from the water. There's no water, obviously, to the east, but to the west there's a considerable distance. And we also, you know, from planning, there were some comments about maybe putting a fence between the active area and just the edge of the pond, that short area there, which we would be willing to do that if that's requested by the city as well. So we believe it's a well done subdivision. It's very similar to other subdivisions in the area. I personally think it's a little better designed. The way the roads are, and there's some uniqueness to it. I think Todd Ferris did a great job in designing it. It's not, you know, just linear X's and crossroads, which sometimes you see in developments. So we believe in it. The roundabout, there's supposed to be a county's going to put an elementary school in, provided they get their levy approved to the south of Peach Blow Road. So going to have a lot of access for kids to go to school right there. So we really believe in the project, and have a couple builders signed on currently that are building in the area that we really look forward to moving forward with it. So if you have any other questions or concerns.
Part of the problem with this property, Michael Shade, Post Office Box 438, Delaware, Ohio, is that we are taking, you look at the water, we're taking water from other people. We're taking water from Pulte. Some of the water that flows this way will come from Evans Farms immediately to the east. And the pond that runs along the Gunling property is there primarily to also serve the runoff from that potential roadway, should that be built. As we have tried to do in working out with the city, and I think Dave could tell you, this was a year and a half in the making. Everything was paid attention to. Everything is spelled out in your ordinances, and my client will live up to those. This is a preliminary development plat, not the final, and stuff will come up on the final, and we will address those. But I think, you know, you also have to look at, you know, you have $1.6 million in roadway going through this project unloaded. No driveways, and that's all being borne by the developer. You have the connection point because of the miscue on the Belmont Estates. So we had to work around an alignment issue. That was a $350,000 price tag. All the community authorities, all the $1,000 per lot, the $3,200 for the sewer, all are being paid. Now that'll ultimately be borne by the buyer, but the client's taking a significant risk here. And then we just find out, I was at a meeting down at Berlin Township, and almost right across the street from the Gunlings, they're gonna be adding on and extending the commercial. So all that south, immediately south except for the school, before you get to the housing on the Don Kenny project, the Metro Development Project, will be school and commercial. This is, you know, the township has its idea of what he wants this to look like. We have, in the city, our idea of what we want this to look like. This is well within the notion and purview of what you've done in your comp plan. This is the southern border. And unless you change your rules, this is the southern border. So this is the last piece that has to fit. But it also has to take into account a lot of the issues and controls that we don't have control over. We don't have control over Peach Blow Road. You know, this is now going to be, Winterbourne Road is now going to be the top point of what will eventually become Green Meadows Drive. I'm assuming that's going to start at Lewis Center Road, but this is part of a county connection road, major thoroughfare plan to go all the way from here, Winterbourne, the top end of Winterbourne, Cheshire Road, all the way down to Powell Road. So there are a ton of moving parts here. I think Dave and his staff, the engineers, everybody worked zealously and through a lot of difficult issues. And I think that this is the result of a lot of good planning. Is everything perfect? No subdivision is. And we'll find out. We're gonna find out a lot of different things. Now, I will point out to you one thing about the AEP easement. Understand one thing. It is 100% clear cut. No trees. They can absolutely prohibit trees being built there or growing there. They also, that easement area is much wider, a lot wider. The actual tower is about 50 feet across. So we're not talking about something, this has existed. We're now kind of an infill project. So I think all those things have to be taken into consideration. The county was great to work with. They're you know, working with us on the roundabout, and we hope this will add to the traffic flow in the area, and it'll be a great community for Delaware.
Any questions for the applicant?
Talk to me about the lot sizes, the lot widths.
The 52s?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the 52s are primarily designed for, you know, I wouldn't call them empty nesters. This is more for younger people. You may have some empty nesters in there, but it's for younger people that don't want, you know, aren't ready to have a family. They're not ready to move up to that area. And one of our primary concerns were with these smaller lots is that because of all the commercial activity that may be going in south, that we did not want that area to be primarily for families. It was going to be more adult related and not geared towards you know, a lot of things we associate with single families. There may be families there. There may be young families there, but it's not designed to attract those, you know, where you have, you know, at the northern end, the big 80-foot lots.
So how will the housing product be different on the 50-foot lots as opposed to the 80-foot?
Everything that my clients work through with the people that are looking at it, they think this will go very fast.
No, but I mean, what sort of housing product will go on the?
That was all in the plans that were submitted when we came through on preliminary development plan.
No, I'm asking you to tell me though, how will they be different, the 80-foot lots than the 50-foot lots?
They're a smaller footprint than you would have, but they're gonna be probably in the $350,000 range. And if the great things are going in the building area, in the building arena, that may be low. Because you're talking about, it's not unknown in the building community right now at $170, $175 a square foot.
I guess that's sort of what I'm getting at is, I don't know if any of you have gone and driven back in the Ryan neighborhood that's near the Kroger on 23. It is so claustrophobic in there. The houses, if you look at them, it looks like just one house right after another connected. And this isn't what we all keep talking about as affordable housing. This isn't, they're not 50-foot lots so that we're getting retirees or empty nesters or creating a new product. I'm not seeing the benefit to the 50-foot lot. We're not creating a new housing product. It's the same product we're offering everywhere else. We're just crowding more of them together.
I think what they're telling us is we hear so much that they don't want the yard. They want they want smaller yards.
Then why is it that the very first lot in every subdivision is always the biggest one?
It's a model home. They put everything they could think of on that model.
I just,
A lot of what we're seeing, and I know the county is seeing it, Councilwoman Keller, it's good questions, are that the lots may be smaller, but the homes sometimes are exactly the same size.
which just puts them closer together.
Puts them closer together in some respects, although there's lot depth to consider there as well. So they're getting a little narrower, but sometimes a little bit deeper. They can appear to be a little bit closer together, but that's where we have some, I think, good design guidelines with respect to whether it's an 80-foot lot or a 50-whatever foot lot in this subdivision. In terms of design of the building itself, eaves, overhangs, natural materials, they're going to have to all not be exactly the same for the reasons you just stated, but there is some variety allowed, but they'll all be higher in quality, which is, I think, what doesn't necessarily address the affordability issue, but it does address the quality issue.
Well, it's my understanding this is kind of a trend throughout the country, is people want the smaller lots, the higher density, the more walkable neighborhoods, and so.
I pulled off, when we were going through and never presented them, but I pulled off about 15 major articles, National Home Builders Association, through numerous communities, large communities, small communities. You know, you can accept the trend or you can deny it. And then you're going to be on the losing end, because people will buy what they can afford and what it provides for them as a homeowner. And so I think that Bob did a lot of research. Every developer I know does a lot of research. These guys aren't in the business of losing money. And let me tell you, the pressure is there today as I have never seen it in my 41 years of practice. The economics are tough, very tough. The carry charges, it's just a different world out there. Will things settle down? Will things maybe go back? Yeah. You know, give it 20 years, but you know, we're looking in this area in the New Berlin High School corridor east of the railroad track. Everything in there is jumbo loan. There's nothing under jumbo loan.
Well, the mayor and I were along some others, at a seminar this weekend, builders that build all over the country, and this evidently is not unique to this area.
Not everyone was invited to that meeting this weekend. There were a significant number of council members who were not given an invite to that meeting.
That's okay, I wasn't either.
Dave, can you just explain the connection to the subdivision to the west, how that was resolved?
To the west? So Belmont Place are all 65-foot wide lots. I don't know if that was subdivision you were referring to, Councilwoman
Yeah.
Keller, and some of your remarks here, but this is the so-called Ohio Health tail or right-of-way.
Right.
And so this road will essentially go like that and connect the two subdivisions. There'll be some additional plantings in this area that we talked about extensively through the zoning hearings. There'll be obviously the secondary entrance here to the subdivision off of Peach Blow, one that will go into and is being accounted for into the Evans Farm property, and then Winterbourne up in through communities of Glen Ross and on to Cheshire Road and even on to the northern parts of Communities of Glen Ross subdivision.
At one point, wasn't it just a straight connection from one subdivision to the other? You decided to make the jog, is that? No, but I.
Very early stages of this preliminary, there was a concept that had coming
just-
straight across and over
Right,
the
okay.
back end of that private
All right,
property.
I'm not forgetting that. That was,
Right.
that, it's just been modified
That was the
over
concept, correct.
time here.
Well,
Okay.
very, very early on in the planning of Belmont, there was the proposed straight road here, and that would end up giving you more of the aesthetic effect of just one long road with
Right,
a
okay.
bunch of houses on the road too.
We have the connection.
Yes.
From a service standpoint, of our refuse vehicles are going from one
Yeah.
service area to the other, okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Dave, when do you think it'll be coming back for,
The first finals, probably as soon as they can engineer. I think they wanna break ground next year if they can. Probably, they wanna break ground this year, but I'm gonna say next year.
Kind of hard with winter coming on it.
No, we see all kind of construction now.
I'm gonna make a motion, I'm gonna let it go to the next reading.
I'd rather take it to another reading.
what do the new guidelines say, Mr. City Attorney?
Well, first of all, we should point out that the guidelines are just that, guidelines, so it's certainly up to council. This is a preliminary subdivision plat, and I thought the guidelines said that the preliminary ones, let me look here. When formal public hearing is required by code, Dave, are public hearings required by preliminary?
No.
They're not, so that's what I thought. So since they're not, when a formal public hearing is required by code, we go a minimum of 2. Because this is not required, it could be 1, but it's certainly not required to be. But it's certainly permitted to do it as 1.
What I'm trying to understand here is that this was an approved preliminary development plan. This plat, as told by the planning department chair, that this meets everything that was in that preliminary development plan. Time is money. Delays are problematic. There is nothing, we will get to those other issues in more of that detail once this process is over with. And my client can't proceed to start his final development till this plat's approved. So,
I understand that. If anybody wants to make a motion, go ahead.
I don't see what we gain by going another 2 weeks on this. So are we not gonna approve it in 2 weeks? I mean, I don't know, nothing.
If you wanna rush it through, then go ahead and make a motion.
Well, I don't think it's rushing through. I mean, the shovel's not gonna hit the ground until the final plan comes through. And
Make your motion.
I'll move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 19-59.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
No.
Mr. Browning?
No.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
No.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move to approve ordinance 19-59.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Jones. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
No.
Mr. Browning?
No.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
No.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Can we put a pause for a second? I'm trying to do the math on how many we need to suspend the rules, because I was
think
tracking
we
the
need
number.
5.
Yeah, you need a super.
Need to be 5.
Did we, I
only
think we had,
4.
I think we had 4, right?
We had 4.
Correct.
So, sorry to do that a little bit late, but with 4, you can't suspend the rules, you need that supermajority. I can confirm that, but that's what I think is right, and I do apologize for not catching that sooner.
That's the case.
I'll confirm that really quick here.
you read faster?
Five members. We need 5 members to suspend the rules. I do apologize.
We'll be back.
Back in 2 weeks. Okay.
Thank you.
City manager's report.
Just a couple of items. I did give you a update, just kind of some additional recommendations regarding aquatics. So if you have any questions, please let me know. But my recommendation stands, and it's contained in the write-up and under my report. Real quickly, the state capital budget is due out. Instructions for the state capital budget are due out in the next week or so. The state capital budget allows for community projects. The Strand has benefited from that in the past. Various community projects. We've applied for trail connections, so we'll be taking a look at what possibly to submit. The deadline is pretty aggressive. It's November 1st. They're not giving us a lot of time. There's also a process that they want communities to go through utilizing MORPC and the Columbus Partnership, so we'll be looking at that. So we'll keep you posted. Speaking of MORPC, Vice Mayor Schaefer was at the meeting last week. They did report, based on our latest population estimate, the city is entitled to 1 additional member to represent the city. So we have 2 members now. So we get a 3rd member. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody from the city council or city staff. It could be somebody within the community. It could be somebody in business, somebody who runs a nonprofit. It could just be a citizen. So we'll keep you. I think it's effective to 2020. So that was.
I'd like to see it be a business leader. So.
So we can.
That's just me then.
Mull that over. I can give you some suggestions from some other communities in terms of the representation of membership. APA event a couple of weeks ago. I think everybody knows about that, and we celebrate that this Thursday. Dave and Lee. There's an event on the square or on the plaza at noon, which is great, and we're looking forward, hopefully, to having everybody attend that. And that's all I've got.
Okay. Council comments? Mr. Jones?
I have none.
Mrs. Keller?
Well, regarding the guidelines for the readings, I don't feel like it's appropriate for developers to come in here and pressure us to make decisions faster than we feel comfortable making them, regardless of what waiting 2 weeks will do. Our code says we read things 3 times. Anything sooner than that is at our pleasure. And so I don't appreciate being put under pressure to vote to suspend the rules sooner than I or anyone else on this board is comfortable with doing. And I really resent that pressure. So I just want to put that on the record. The other thing I'd like to put on the record is this dialogue on development, let's talk about zoning meeting that happened on Saturday, that only a select few members of this council were invited to. What I see forming is a very disturbing trend of developers trying to influence not only this council, but elected bodies throughout the Delaware County. That influence is coming in the form of campaign contributions and through the support of candidates who are running for positions that are very developer friendly, who are being supported by developers. And I think that that should be a red flag to our community and a red flag to all of us, that these decisions should be made in the best interest of the people who live here and not the developers who are bringing forward plans and trying to make money here. And our main priority needs to be what is best for this community. Because after that development is built, we're all left with it. And the developers who build it leave, and they're on to their next community. So if there was an event in the future that candidates who are developer friendly are invited to, I would appreciate an invite as well as a sitting member of this council. And I would think that everyone else that's on this council should receive an equal invite to an invitation that's talking about zoning in our county. That's all, thank you.
Mr. Browning?
First Friday, Chief Donahue and the fire department did a great job. And rumor has it that Ted Miller did some bang-up work for the statue and Lee did a great job with the presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Rohr?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Hellinger?
Mrs. Keller took the words right out of my mouth.
Mr. Shaker?
Just in regard to that meeting this weekend, I don't know who sent the invitation, it was sponsored in part by the Finance Authority, which I'm on the board of directors of, so that's why I was invited to attend. I don't know who sent invitations to whom, I don't think there was any intent to leave anybody out, but.
Just curious to me how candidates knew, but sitting council members didn't. Guess it'll just have to remain a mystery.
Bill, okay, Bill, the one-way street that we did on Sandusky going down to Union when they built the new garage, the new center there, that's supposed to be one way down.
Correct.
Twice on Friday, I almost got hit head-on from somebody coming up it. They were once parking there, maybe at Mary Haven or maybe behind the church. So if we can put another one-way sign, there's a couple of telephone poles someplace along there, cause they're just I'm coming in and they're coming out and there's no place to go. So that concerns me. The sheriff department comes up the hill, right past the one-ways and goes into the garage, but it's the sheriff department, I'm not arguing with them. I'm worried about the people on top of the hill, until there's an accident, so. you
Mayor,
can
I
look-
do have one.
Yes.
If you're, as long as you're done.
I'm not
okay.
done, but go ahead, I'll come back.
No, go ahead.
No, come on.
I just wanna make
let's
sure
hear
I
it.
recognize them. Nope. You finish.
I don't know who sent me the invitation, I assumed everybody on council. It's been on my calendar a month, I remember adding it, but I don't remember who sent it, and I apologize, I didn't call everybody else in council to say, did you get an invite? I just assumed we all did, so.
Came from the Township Association, from Ryan Rivers, I think that's who we got it from, and, we should have probably forwarded it on to all of city council, but we didn't, through my office, we were not.
I mean, I don't think you're in charge of inviting.
Yeah,
I
it's
would-
really,
And I'm sorry I didn't share with everybody, I just assumed if I got it, all of my council members got it, that's all, so I wanna thank Lee, you did a great job on Friday. I mean, that crowd was just amazing, so I'm so proud of what that committee did, what this community did, and it was just wonderful. So thank you, and I am out of town on Saturday, I'm back in DC, so.
and, I'm sorry, I'm out of town as well, I start, my ICMA conference.
We're not going anywhere together,
No,
I'm in.
no. I'm going to Nashville, she's going on honor flight.
Just clarify it.
Yeah, honor flight, Nashville for ICMA, starting Saturday, coming back Wednesday, and Kyle will be acting city manager.
If anyone wants to come to the airport Friday or Saturday night, this is our 100th flight. We are taking 2 planes, one into Reagan, one into Baltimore, 200 veterans. It's gonna be phenomenal. I
That's
am
awesome.
so excited, so.
Awesome.
Okay, now you're up.
This goes to Bill. I meant to ask you this earlier, and George may want to add to this, but I got notified by a resident who rides motorcycles that's telling me, particularly on Houck Road, that person on motorcycle can't activate the light.
Yeah, they don't weigh enough.
They don't weigh enough?
Yeah.
And is there a way to change that?
Yeah, we're working through those.
Okay.
Those involve the new, like, single omnidirectional cameras that replace the old-fashioned loops. But we're learning how to make them recognize, and these systems have to learn as well, to recognize smaller vehicles, especially motorcycles.
Okay.
So we are aware of it.
They say that they don't activate until somebody gets right up on your rear end, on those things,
Yeah,
and
wait
it
till
causes
somebody
an
else gets
issue,
in there.
so.
Yeah, really, it's not so much positional or size anymore, but the system has to learn to become sensitive to smaller vehicles and motorcycles. to be
Okay.
able to recognize it there.
So we're on it then?
We're on it.
I'll pass that along. Thank you. Sorry about that, Mayor.
That's okay. And with that, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So
We are
moved.
adjourned at 8:08.
Shoot, Chris, my, on the fifth time, I'll tell you.
What?
On the fifth time.